Hey, Peg.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to get this on my headphones, so please bear with me. And I don't know why it logged me in as the host. I did not mean to do that, so that's unfortunate for everyone.
I like your response to JP, by the way.
Oh my God.
Flip a coin, you get it.
What are you gonna do? Tom Peak.
Hey guys.
I don't know why it logged me in as like the co-host. I don't know what happened. So my apologies. You are the host with the most. I will help you get people in since I'm just doing nothing right now.
Oh yeah, sure, great. Great. Let me just get on my give people a minute or two to shuffle in. We'll see how many people attend.
I see Omar's name. Is he here? He doesn't want to be seen.
Okay, well, while we're waiting for people to show up, do we have any minutes to approve?
Yes.
We do.
Yeah.
Send some out, Peg. I'm pretty sure you
I
did.
probably sent them out like 5 minutes after the last meeting. That's why I can't remember.
Yes, I believe that you did that and that I looked at them, but I'm just going to double check. When was our last meeting?
Got me. I didn't look it up.
Was it September? Or has it been since then?
It was at least September, if not early October. Let me
see.
It was the 1st.
Okay.
Okay, so I go back to there. Yep, you sent them out on the 1st.
Yeah.
I was able to review these.
I move we accept the minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, we got a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye. Oh, sorry.
Aye.
Okay, I'll also vote aye. Great. Okay, so those minutes are approved. Is there anything else?
Something has gone horribly wrong with my Zoom, so please.
Oh, really?
Bear with me. Yeah, I can't see anything.
Well, you're still on video.
Okay.
We hear you.
Can't get back to it. Okay. There we go.
There he is. Well, we might as well do something.
Yeah. Okay. People are starting to come in. Yeah, I guess let's just get started and people can people can join as they see fit. Okay. So yeah, if you just to sort of catch you guys up on where we were last time and just a little recap, I think the 3 real sticking points that we had on this issue, the ones where we had some sort of questions were about membership. So that includes how many people and specifically what sort of criteria should those, are we putting for that? In other words, like, how many of those people are counselors? Should there be any other city committees that receive any membership? How many members of the public? Are there any particular skill sets that we're looking for? So that's question number one. Question number two is the scope. And maybe that's actually something we want to handle first. I don't know. But in terms of the scope, really the question is, like, this would definitely look at the city ordinances. And then the other two, we have two other documents that sometimes get worked on in either the ordinance committee or the public safety committee, those being the zoning ordinance and the traffic rules and orders. So, there's a question of whether there's anything there that is worth reviewing. And then finally, the third is just about process and what the, in the case that the committee finds something that they believe should change, what are they actually, like, what's the actual next step for them? Are they drafting alternative language, or are they just sort of, getting people to like sending a report back to the council saying, we recommend that there's some changes here and this is kind of what we're looking for, what have you. And that I think is, like, there might be other stuff, but that's sort of the bulk of what I think we need to make decisions on before we can sort of write this whole thing out. So with that in mind, I guess I'll give counselors a first crack at that, and let's just go like point by point, if anyone has any thought, and then any members of the public after that are welcome to weigh in. So Councillor Coniff, do you have any thoughts on the membership?
I think probably at maximum, it should probably be, I don't know, if we can get 7 people, that would be great. I mean, maybe ideally 9 because of the volume of work, but I think if we can get 7, that would be great. I think we absolutely have to have 1 city councilor. I would recommend that it be somebody from the ordinance committee, only because of their knowledge around the ordinance. I also think that city councilor, and maybe we have 2 city councilors, should be the one that brings forward the changes. I don't think we should put it on the committee to have to figure out how to get things to city council. I think the point of having a city councilor on it would be that they would own the getting of it to us. As far as should we have any membership from other committees, I actually hadn't thought about that, so I don't have an opinion yet. And skill sets, as with all of our committees, we don't really put parameters around skill sets, and I don't think we should. I think certainly if people come to us and want to be on it with a specific skill set, that's great. But I think if we start to put requirements around what we're looking for, we're going to lose out on a lot of the pieces of the population. So I'm not, unless there's a way to be more specific about what you're looking for in skill sets. It feels not awesome to put a skill set around this. I think a want to and an interest in reading and learning about our ordinances, as well as, I guess now maybe what I'm thinking is maybe somebody with a anti-bias background or something of that nature, where they have a little familiarity on the words that they should be looking at. Maybe that would be helpful, but those are my thoughts on question 1.
How about you, Councilor Rest?
I have a couple of things. The Charter Review Committee really makes me think about how this membership could work. I think 7 is a good number. 9 is difficult only because you have quorum issues. But I think 7 would be good. If you're going to have less councilors, then this committee, although it's a select committee of the city council, I don't believe it can take any action on its own without at least 3 members. And I only say that because if you want the committee to actually write new new ordinances, there needs to be council membership on it. If it's advisory, it could be one counselor and 6 citizens. It can be whatever the membership wants to be. But then there's another process. They send the advice to the city council, and the city council chooses to send it to the ordinance committee, which has the authority to review an ordinance. And I'm not sure where I am with that, but if it's a select committee of the council with at least 3 members of the council, then we remove a step. They don't have to go to another ordinance committee. They can actually write new language, I feel, as long as there's council membership on it, which may speak to having 9 members, so 3 and 6. If you want a lot of community involvement, and that's where I'm at. I worry about quorums and getting people to membership, but Peg's comment about the amount of workload, more people means distributing the workload, because people are going to have to do some homework here as you develop it. But I'm more inclined to want to take a step out of it. I don't think it needs to come back to the council and then go back to an ordinance committee. If they see an ordinance that maybe their advisor, that ACL attorney, says that this has some bias in it, then let's work on that ordinance and present the new language to the city council. And remember, the city attorney's got to look at these. So once they target ordinances that they feel need review, we bring the city attorney in. Hey, this is new language we want to change, and the city attorney is involved, because that's in the charter. The city attorney's got to have some supervision, and I think it's at the point of when the ordinance is being presented to be. We don't have to have them in looking at all this. That would be expensive, but because the city attorney has to be involved, let's make this a committee with at least 3 counselors, 9 members, so there's more community members if we want to do that. But at least 3 counselors, so that when it comes to the city council, it's a committee of the council. We can say, all right, these ordinances were reviewed by this committee, like the charter review committee in that sense. I'm feeling like you have to have at least 3 counselors. Now, finding 3 counselors that want to take the time to be on this. This counselor has already done the charter review, so I don't feel like I'm going to volunteer, just so you know. And lastly, all of our committees are selected by the president. I'm worried about when this is all going to get done so that this committee can start its work. If we decide we want the council to choose these, we can decide that, but I think the president can make the choices. And if the president, Peg, if you want them reviewed by the appointments committee, or, you know, et cetera, I guess that's okay, but then you're taking a lot of time. That's just my thought. I don't know.
Okay.
Peg, we lost you. It now says Easthampton City Council. Are you there? There she is. She's back.
I'm here. I'm here. Sorry.
So I don't know. I just think.
No, I think you're right. I think that I like where you're going with this.
Okay.
I just think that Peg should make the decision. It's done. And I'm only saying all this because every step you add lengthens the time until they get the work done. And we only have 13 months left in this term.
Yeah, that's legit. We definitely need to get this up and running by the end of the year so that it has a year to operate before, you know, before potentially some of the counselors are no longer counselors. Councilor Gomez, do you have any thoughts on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I do. I agree with Councilor Coniff and Councilor Rest. I think the number should be 7 for the committee. 9, I think, is going to be tough, but the number that I was working in my head, that was 7, probably between 2 or 3 councilors, but probably 4 to 5 members of the city. And I think the process should be open and let the president of the council to choose those members for the ad hoc committee. Something that I'm kind of concerned. I don't see this committee, at least me particularly, I don't see this committee to create any new ordinance. I think this committee is to review the ordinance, and if they have any recommendation of any change or what they see at the ordinance, they will change probably the language. I mean, propose a new language for the ordinance, but no a new ordinance per se.
Excuse me, Omar, are you
Yep.
saying they can propose amendments to an ordinance but not create a new ordinance? I'm not sure what I,
Yes, I don't think this committee should be a committee to create a new ordinance. I think that's the job of the ordinance committee. I think this ad hoc committee will be particularly to review all the ordinance, and if they found something, they will propose a new language or amendment to the ordinance.
the
I
one
think-
that exists.
Yes, yes,
I would agree. We're just talking about amending existing ordinance.
yes, yes.
Right.
But again, I think the number should be between 7 members. I think, and if we can find 3 council, would be amazing. I think the council should be part of this conversation.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I basically, Councilor Gomez basically said everything that I was going to say, but I'll just sort of recap it with my own sort of spin on it. I was thinking 7 would be a good number. When we had the Charter Review Committee, we had 8. Telecom has 9. Big groups like that are great for a diversity of opinions, but when you actually get into the process of like working on the minutia, every additional person who's like trying to cut in to say, oh no, you should put a semicolon there or whatever, it really does like add, and like Councillor Rist has mentioned, the more people you add, also the more people you need to wrangle to find a day that consistently works with everyone's schedule and everything like that. So to me, 7, I mean, I'm not like, there's nothing here that I'm like absolutely like dead set on, but that's my inclination, is that that's around the number that I'm sort of looking for. I'd like to see preferably 3, at least 2 members that are city councilors, because I think there needs to be sort of an ongoing conversation. And particularly, I'd like to see somebody, at least one person, who's had some recent experience serving on both the ordinance and the public safety committee, because remember that public safety actually writes a good deal of ordinances. And I just want to make sure that there's folks that are like just plugged into sort of those committees and the sort of thinking that's gone on around them that can sort of participate in those conversations. And so then if there's 2 to 3 counselors, and that would be 4 to 5 members of the community. And when I said skill set, all I really mean is like, I think it is ultimately going to be the council president's decision who those members are. But, I might advise that either members who have like formal work experience or educational experience in either law or anti-bias or sociology or stuff like that, or people who have actually lived some of that stuff, either on the city side or as somebody who potentially has been a victim of systemic bias at some point in their life. Those people might actually be people who are able to, I mean, we have some great counselors. The thing that I would really, if I was saying like, who's going to bring a lot of value to this conversation from members of the public, it would be people who are going to help us see things that we might not see otherwise, right? So anyone who has some experience with that stuff, either professionally or personally, I think would have the potential to really to maybe help us where we might have some blind spots. And I think that'd be valuable. But that is, that's really all that I have. At this point, I'd actually like to ask, we have, 3 members of the public here. Does anybody have sort of any thoughts on just this so far? I see Louise is raising her hand. Just sort of who should sit on this? Here, I'll go ahead and unmute Louise. Oh, she's unmuted.
Oh God, I was trying to give myself a background. Let's just ignore it. Graphics has never been my thing. Hi. Okay, I was just some thoughts because I wasn't quite prepared for this, but I think what Tom was just saying about anti-bias background is absolutely great. I think that's probably, if there's some blue laws or some like historic relics hanging around, anybody with common sense is going to be able to recognize those. And I think what's really needed here and what's been the concerns now is the structural, the institutional bias, and that's the terms we used to use, and a lot of, and some of it can even be things that have a structural bias and weren't had a different intent, but in practice, that's what they end up achieving. I don't know. I haven't looked at ordinances. I certainly haven't looked at Massachusetts ordinances. Tom, you do know from our conversations earlier today how ignorant I am of that, but I've had experience other places. Anyway, my main concern would be that there's more than one person representing lived experience and professional experience of more than one type of bias, because there's a lot of intersectionality, but on the other hand, some of the things we used to be trying to overturn 20 and 30 years ago to do with the position of women in society and things, a lot of requirements that impacted people with kids that nobody had even thought of, a lot of stuff like that, maybe needs another review, but probably does. But you've got racism, you've got what seems to be stranger bias, I'll say, call it, which have, anyway, I'm trying to urge that you look for a variety. I mean, Tom, you just said, if I've got my notes, you don't need a huge diversity of opinions, and I agree with that, but I would say you might need a diversity of experience and a diversity of expertise. That was my main point. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise. Does anybody else have any thoughts on this?
Eileen, you have to turn your mic off. On, I mean.
Sorry. Haven't been on Zoom for a couple of weeks.
Get so lucky.
I know.
Eileen, can you give us your name? I know
sorry.
Louise, but I want to make sure I get your name.
Yes, it's Eileen Rakowskis. And I've been living in Easthampton about 3 years and trying to find some way to become more involved in what's happening, especially given our circumstances, not just Easthampton, but the larger circumstances. And I had sent an email to Tom expressing interest because I had seen this somewhere that you were putting together a committee, and social justice has always been something I've been concerned about, interested in. I don't have any necessarily formal experience job-wise. I have done different things over the course of the years. So it's mainly an interest in it. I believe what I told Tom was that I thought there was also a need for diverse perspectives, which everyone seems to be in agreement on. And yeah, I worked at Mount Holyoke College for 20 years, not in a, position where I was doing workshops, that kind of thing, but it was just it was just the focus, the overall system of paying attention to who is and isn't included, what's allowed, what's not allowed, who's at the table, kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, there's so many aspects in terms of bias and I just, it's something that I'm very interested in and feel like that's maybe some place that I could fit in to,
Sure.
to do something productive in Easthampton.
And that's great. I would just say, right now we aren't. I definitely encourage you to apply. But right now we're really sort of more broadly trying to figure out sort of like what is this committee going to look like, and
Right.
if you want to personally participate on it, I would absolutely encourage you to. But do you have sort of any more thoughts about just like kind of how big should the committee be? What sort of folks should be on it? Anything like that?
Well, I think like others were saying, it to have a professional, you know, you have a sense that you want, it sounds like maybe 3 counselors to participate. So I don't know enough about the council. I've gone to some meetings, but I'd leave that totally up to all of you. And then bringing in other people, professional backgrounds in various ways. But I think it's also important to make sure that there's voices who have experienced bias, whether it's racism or whatever it is, homophobia. It needs to, I think that those are crucial voices to have at the table. And you know, 7 and 9, you were talking about particulars about that. I don't have a thought particular to that, other than when something gets too big, it can get really wieldy or unwieldy, and could be difficult to work with. I don't have a particular feeling about that.
Okay, great. Well, thank you.
Hey, Tom, I just wanted to let you know that I'm here. I just have my camera off because there's distractions going on, and I just thought I'd leave the camera off, but I'm here.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I had another thought, Tom.
Sure.
The one thing about this is that we have to have a commitment. So as much as we want to shape what the membership is, the people have to volunteer to want to be on this, including councilors. I don't think Peg should be going out twisting arms on city councilors. Come on, we need you on this committee. I think they have to want to do it. And getting people with bias life experiences would be great, but they have to apply. So when we announce the committee, we have to make sure that we tell them we'd like them to be on it, which goes to what this committee is doing. It's not looking at every ordinance to see if the ordinance is still pertinent or if it needs to be changed for other reasons. I believe this should be strictly focused on bias in our ordinances. We're not looking to try, and we should have done this many times, redo all the ordinances or get rid of ordinances that make no sense, that historically were put in that are no longer pertinent. That may be something somebody should do sometime, but this is strictly about bias. So I'm wondering if that's something that I think this committee should decide, because that directs to the membership of the committee. If we're looking at just the bias in our ordinances, then that's their task. The task can't be to review every ordinance, say, is this still a zoning ordinance that makes sense? And it has nothing to do with bias, it has something to do with zoning. I don't think that should be the task of the ordinance. And I think that's important, because if that's the task, then the membership has to be about bias, and it has to be people that see language that might raise red flags because they have that experience, So I'm just wondering, I think that should be part of our direction to the committee.
So
Bias
yeah,
in the ordinances, you know what I mean?
right. I see 2 people have their hands raised. I'll get to you in a second. I just wanted to say, I'm actually not 100% sure I agree with you totally there, Dan, although I think I'm halfway there. I definitely think the focus of this has to be, the bias, because that's the moment that brought this up. But if they're going through the ordinances and they find something that they just think is like, hey, did you guys even know this is here? I don't see why there's harm. Like they had their eyes on it, you know. I don't see why there's necessarily any harm in them. And this will probably get a little bit to the process, but I just think that personally, I don't necessarily think that they should be like, they should feel like it's out of their scope to just point out that something is like just silly or doesn't really fit, even if it doesn't necessarily fit with the reason that we're starting. That's just my take. But
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
It's just the membership should be about bias. That's all I'm saying.
Two folks have had their hands up for a minute, so I'm going to let Sam speak first because he has not said anything yet.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
My name is Sam Sharon. I live out on Strong Street here in Easthampton. And I became aware of this at the march that occurred. That happened here. I was a legal observer. It was actually, I heard you speak, Councillor Peak. Something that occurs to me is that I think just instinctually, it seems correct that the way forward is to, as far as membership goes, is to kind of broadly advertise and make the public aware of the opportunity and what the work of the board is or of the committee is going to be, and see, you know, who comes to it. I think just by definition, it's going to be a self-selecting group of people who are enthusiastic about the work. And, you know, I think you would hopefully get a broad, you know, cross-section of folks of different professional backgrounds, life experience, etc. It just, I often, one thing that I've seen happen a lot is, you know, when people are going out looking for people here and there, and the folks that they speak to are kind of necessarily part of their networks, and you know, sometimes that doesn't lead to the most diverse pool of people. So I don't know. I guess I'd like to see guys really cast a wide net, and maybe not think so much about what skill set or you know, those things that you're looking for. I mean, have it in the back of your mind, but maybe just you know, concentrate on getting a really kind of robust pool of folks that are interested in it. I guess that's all I would share for now. So thank you.
Thank you. I see Louise had her hand up again. Louise, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, thank you. It was partly a response to Councillor Rist. Sorry, but I wanted to point out that zoning, this may or may not be relevant, but zoning ordinances have been a major source of discrimination, of separation. I don't think we can just say there's whole areas. We'll partly just point that out. Another example that's coming to my mind, although how we separate the ordinances from the difficult situations and divisions currently occurring around the schools. I'm not sure, and I might be confusing them a bit, but I would point out that something like the decision about an SRO was made for very different reasons, but actually has a tremendous racial impact on certain kids in the school. So I don't know, it's almost like the more you look at things, the more you see. I know we can't do it all now. there's a little bit of me saying I'm not applying, but my dream candidates would be a retired ACLU litigator from the area. But because we can't afford one, I'm assuming Easthampton can't afford to pay one. And certainly none of those people have any spare time that they're going to volunteer if they happen to live here. But anyway, that was, okay, I'll throw out one other thought I had, which is almost include a police representative, because another area of concern is actually how EPD interprets and acts. Like, what's their take on these ordinances?
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea, but
speak.
it would be worth. Yeah, absolutely. I'm done. Sorry. I'm just.
I can speak to that a little bit. That I spoke to Chief Alberti before I submitted this, and he had said that he will be sending one of his officers to just be in the meetings, so that if there's questions like how often does this even get enforced, or that sort of thing, there will be someone on hand to take those questions back to the department and get a quick turnaround, hopefully like a next meeting turnaround on any sort of data that the committee wants. I do think that in general, like, I'm not sure about a member of a department sitting on a council committee, although I guess that has been done with the senior tax work off. But I do think there will be an individual in the room with knowledge of that, with knowledge of that stuff, and who can act as a liaison and get information back and forth pretty quickly. So that's something that we actually, that I think will be there as a resource for the committee to sort of help us understand how these things actually play out in practice.
Thank you, Louise. That's excellent. And Tom, excellent. Enforcement is the key. If we have an ordinance, is it enforced?
Right, because there might be some things that just, we haven't cited somebody in 50 years for this, so you kind of have to ask yourself whether it should even be there. But it does sound like we're kind of turning, I mean, in the comments that Dan said, and then also in Louise's comment. Actually, sorry, Councilor Gomez, you had your hand up a minute ago. Do you have anything?
No, thank you, Mr. Sherman. I just want to be now the echo of what you said. I agree with you 100%. The committee should be, the main goal is to find bias of discrimination in the ordinance, but they shouldn't be limited to that. If they found something that it doesn't make any sense, is an ordinance that is obsolete. So I think they should be able to bring it forward too. I just want to echo that. And about the members, I agree 100% that people should be, the people who apply for the committee should have some life experience and bias of discrimination and in a way, or having been trained for that, or being working in that field. But I don't want to limit it to that too. So I guess the should be open for everybody. So everybody should be applying. And then for the group of the people who are applying, the president of the council, in this case, the probably is going to be the person who's going to choose the people to be in this committee, evaluate each candidate individually, and recommend it and appoint it for the committee.
Just a clarification, I don't disagree that if they see something that's obviously nothing to do with bias, but that ordinance should be removed. My problem is, whoever's the chair of the committee, we don't want to get bogged down in debating this particular ordinance that has nothing, that we don't see bias, but we see it, if there's a big debate and it takes an hour of the time away from what you're really tasked for. I think that, and again, I think we don't have to give that instruction, but I think whoever chairs this committee, there should be some discussion about how do you get by making sure that the real task is the bias. But if you see something, make a note, this should be talked about or something. But if you spend a lot of time at the committee level talking about something that's not really your primary purpose, it just takes time away. And we know how hard it is to get meetings. If you want something done, you're going to have 2 meetings a month. And with that, as you know, Tom and Omar, we didn't get all the charter stuff done we wanted to get done. So just putting it there that I guess it's gonna be up to the chair of the committee to decide. Are we gonna spend a lot of time on this particular ordinance when it's not really our task? And I guess I see what you're saying. Make a note, maybe you go back to it. Maybe we can recommend that this be removed. It's no longer enforceable or necessary or whatever it is. But
Mhm.
you know what I mean? I just want to know. That's all I'm saying. You want to make sure that you have the time to do the work you're really trying to do.
Yeah. So actually, let's skip forward to what I called question 3 for a minute, because I actually think that what the rest of what we talk about is going to be kind of determined based on this. So I'm just going to say where I am right now, and then I'm interested where everybody else is on this. What I'm kind of envisioning from this committee is not a motion so much as a report. So it would be saying, we the committee looked over the city ordinances, and here are our comments. If the comments, ordinance, blah, blah, blah. This is like, we don't understand why this is here in the first place. We talked to the police. There's no point of it. Ordinance B, hey, we actually looked at this, and while it was probably put in place for good reasons, what you might not realize is that it could be used in a way that actually disproportionately impacts certain groups of people. We recommend taking, like whatever recommendations they want to make, which could be as broad as like, you got to do something about this, or as specific as like, really, you need to substitute this kind of language for this kind of language or whatever. And then the idea is that at the end, either in parts or in a whole, depending on how they want to do it, they could send a report quarterly, or they could send a final report at the end, or monthly, or whatever they want to do. But the idea is that they are reporting back to the council, and then those issues are getting flagged for the council to actually address in a like case by case basis, so that if there's things that are really complicated and take a long time for us to fix, that's not necessarily a problem with the committee's timeline and the timeline that we can realistically ask of city volunteers. So like if there's something where, okay, that's going to require this entire thing to be reworked, then they just say, look, you're going to have to totally rework that. And then it can go to ordinance, and we can ask for as many extensions as it takes to get it right. But in the meantime, they can keep working through the whole thing, because we have capable legislative committees. We have 2 very capable committees that their main job is crafting legislation that can be handling that stuff. If we have sort of a group of people who are going to put their eyes on everything that we as the city of Easthampton has done up to this point, and sort of point out the things that you guys have got to work on. So that's where I am on this one point. And I'm, again, on any of this, willing to be talked out, but given I sense, Councillor Rist, your well-founded anxiety in this whole thing. I mean that, like that this is the kind of thing, sort of like with charter, that you could get to, you're a year in and you're like, oh my God, there's so much I still want to do that we couldn't even get to. So I feel like that, saying like, we don't want you to rewrite the ordinances. We want you to report back to us on what you found, and if there's anything that is troubling or needs to be reworked. That I think helps us manage the timeline. So what do you, members of the committee and councilors, what do you think of that idea?
I like it. I really do. I think a report to the council, it may take a year to get there, but we're not under any obligation to finish the work this term. We're an obligation to say, we found these particular issues in our ordinances, and the next council takes them up. Maybe that has to be done, because it takes time, as you know, to go through ordinances, rewrite them, amend them, go to the city attorney. But a report that says, we feel that it has been flagged by our committee as being a bias, and there's something wrong with this ordinance that may affect a certain group. I like it. I think trying to get them to actually write language for an ordinance may be way too much to ask. And there's so many ordinances. I think a report maybe all that we need. Maybe next council, there's a select committee designed specifically to take this report and work on actual language. And that committee is purely council members, all I'm saying. But, you know, I like the report. I think that's the best way to go. I'm wrong. I don't think we should ask this committee to do amended language for an ordinance. I mean, if they have the time and they get to that, okay. But that involves then the process of the city attorney and bringing it back to council and all that. There's not a lot of time here, so a report may be practical in getting it done. So we have a group that put some eyes on this. Next council acts on it. Maybe that's the way it goes. I don't know.
And it could also be something where it doesn't have to be just one report. They could say, hey, so we've been reviewing it over the last 2 months. This is the stuff we found so far. You know, we've looked at over these sections. These are the things we found. We think that this, and this can probably be removed from the ordinances. And then ordinance can just handle that while they keep going. You know, but presumably like whoever's chairing the committee can just take those recommendations and report them back and turn them into motions that can then, you know, go forward, you know, if they want to, or they can hold out till the end. But if there's stuff along the way, you know, and we did this with charter review, if there's stuff along the way where we're just like, we're not done yet, but you definitely want to do something about this as soon as possible, then that's something that I think is pretty, like that can, these things can happen in tandem.
And they can act any way they want. If they see something seriously flawed and they feel the council should take immediate action, why not give it to us? They could give it to us after a month of their deliberations, you know, it doesn't matter. I don't know. What do you think, Peg?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think having something more iterative as opposed to waiting until next December for some grand report. I think as they find things, I would encourage them to get it to us as quickly as possible so that we can begin working on it. I do feel a little like it's going to be a daunting task, and the more we can get done incrementally, I think will not only help the committee feel empowered and excited to continue working on it, but I think we will also become energized and start to think about other things that we might want to look at as well. So, you know, I'm all for, as soon as we start to see things, to start to take action as opposed to waiting. And if that means a monthly report, a quarterly report, or an as we find it report, you know, I think they're all fair game. However, the committee thinks efficiently it can work coming to us. You know, I don't want them to have to feel like every month they have to bring something to us. It needs to be very organic.
Councilor Gomez, do you have any thoughts? Okay, cool. Any members of the public have any thoughts on this general structure for handling the business?
I think it makes sense. Doing the report, it gives it some structure, which it sounds like it really needs, that it's such a behemoth of a project that having some initial structure would be really helpful.
Great. Councilor.
I tend to agree. We should not only recommend to the city council from our committee, the membership, 2 or 3 members of the council and 4 members of the citizenry, but also what the structure, what their task is and what the structure should be, how they're going to go about it. We'd like you to issue a report, not necessarily deal with actual language changes, but a report on and flagging things. Whatever we want to say, we need to give the select committee some marching orders that they know how they should proceed. And I think this is a good way to do it. We're tasked to decide how this committee is going to be formed and what its structure should be. What will its process be? Okay, we want you to give us a monthly report. If that monthly report has nothing, okay. But we want you to, you know, the chairman has to come, and the chairman is a citizen. It's okay. They come to the council meeting and give a report. It doesn't matter, you know. So I like it.
Okay.
especially if they're not tasked with writing new language, because that's difficult.
Right. And also it's worth mentioning, if they're not writing new language, we don't really need to have the city solicitor too intimately involved because they're not writing new language, right? You know, if they're sending a report saying, we recommend that you delete this ordinance, like if there's any issue with that, the solicitor can handle that on council time, but we're not going to have to worry about having the solicitor and 3 councilors and 4 members of the public all juggling their thoughts around in these very long meetings where he's charging by the 15-minute interval.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, the taxpayers.
If there's something like that, it goes to the ordinance committee.
Yeah.
They choose to agree with the select committee, then it goes to the city attorney. And that's where the level of supervision comes in. And I have to say the charter, as much as it has some ambiguity, this ambiguity is helpful here. What does that supervision mean? I think we can decide what that means. We're not.
It means that he's
changing any
CC'd on
ordinance.
every report.
We just CC him, and if he sees something that he's worried about, I don't know. I hope he doesn't charge us for reading a report. I don't know.
Oh, that's a good point.
I hope not.
What a weird incentive structure. We are incentivized to not talk to our lawyers.
It's sad.
Yeah.
Well, it goes to putting lawyers on retainer.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that's a point that maybe we touch base with the mayor on before we get a final thing, is just sort of like, that's actually a thing that I hadn't even asked or thought to ask about, but it is a question that we probably want to get a resolution to. And I'll just call the mayor and ask, but it's just like what she sees the role of the city solicitor in being, just so that we're not engaging in a way that's going to end up running up a massive legal bill when really, I mean, frankly,
I
if
think
we have
this
the
is our
authority.
decision, though, Tom. I think.
Yeah, no, I agree, but just I feel like I'd have a better like, you know what I mean? Like the more I understand sort of the process, the better we're off we're going to be there. But ultimately, like if what they're doing is removing an ordinance, if we have the authority to write it, we have the authority to unwrite it. Like, you know.
Well, yeah, but they don't have that authority. They have the authority to recommend it. I thought that's where we were.
Yeah, no, of course. I'm saying that if we as the council wrote something, I don't understand why the solicitor necessarily needs to be like weigh in on us striking language that we wrote. Like if we have I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole. I'm just saying, like, you know.
I think if you strike any language, you may still need attorney review, but that's the second step. The first step is finding that language and deciding, yes, this should be struck. And then letting this council, the next council decide to do it or not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
I just think getting the city attorney involved is really the city council's decision and the president's decision as to how much we want to involve them and when. And I think the when is if we're actually going to do something with an ordinance that this committee recommends, that's when we involve them.
Right. Okay. So yeah, that's good to know. Okay, the one big question that I have right now that I'm interested, so this body is definitely going to review the city ordinances. We have 2 other documents that get handled either by ordinance or public safety on a fairly regular basis. Those are the traffic rules and orders and the zoning ordinance. And I don't think that we should obligate the committee to handle either one of those because there's a lot of ordinances and that might take them the entire time. But if let's just say that they burn through this at an incredible pace and are finished in 4 months reviewing all the city ordinances, do we want to sort of say that they are should we say like that if they want they can review those things, or are there things that we think really would maybe actually just need a whole different sort of structure for, or do you have any thoughts there, any of you?
I think the zoning ordinances. Go ahead. Who's saying? Who is that?
Sorry, yeah, it was Peg. No, I think primarily this group should look at ordinances.
Mhm.
And if they find themselves moving quicker, they can move into zoning. Because I agree with Louise, I think those are also fraught with bias, and we should look at those. But I think we need to be very lockstep in how we do this. So if at the end of 6 months, they've gone through every ordinance we have, they've given us a report with every change, then certainly let's have them now go after zoning. I think the committee should be a 12-month committee. However much work they get done in that 12 months could be everything, or it could be only a fraction of the ordinances, but it should be a 12-month committee.
Okay. So in terms of things beyond the actual document that is the city ordinances, do we want to kind of play that with cross that bridge when we get there, kind of, you know, if they, in the case that they decide that they want more work, we'll talk about it, but let's not get ahead of ourselves type attitude?
I would just say that I agree with zoning. I think traffic rules and orders ought to be included in their initial purview because, well, there's not as many as there are zoning ordinances. Zoning ordinances involve a great deal of complication. Planning board, you have master plans, you have other ideas that come into zoning. But I agree with Louise, zoning has, in big cities, for instance, has a great deal to do with how they try to zone certain groups or something that's obvious. I don't know if it's available in our city, but in this case, I would like to make sure that they get the other stuff done first, because there's so much in zoning. But I agree with Peg. Let's get them done. I don't have a problem with traffic rules and orders being part of the initial conversation. It goes back to the enforcement issue we were talking about. Omar, what do you think? Should they include traffic right away and let the zoning be the thing they put off? You agree?
Yes, I agree. I think the traffic rules and orders should be part of it.
Okay.
And I don't know what they're looking for, but I don't think those particular things, because the police are very much involved, say, when we're talking about how our ordinances are enforced. That's an issue where traffic rules and orders become, how is it enforced in our city, et cetera. That could be more. Zoning is typically enforced by the building inspector. So that's a different whole ball of wax. So you might want to have a select committee to review zoning.
That it could be its own thing, and you might need a different. That's my one thought is like, if we're talking about that, I would actually like want the planning board to maybe send somebody or something.
Well, they do master plans based on that particular thing. They look at the zoning and they change their master plan. It happens every 10 years or so.
Yeah.
And
because
so, I don't know.
I mean, right. It is something where I'm conflicted because on one hand, if I had to put money on where we're going to find something that was like either intentionally or unintentionally like hurting certain marginalized groups, I would put it in the zoning. But the other thing is we have like a 300-page zoning ordinance. It's super long. And if you don't have a certain, like I'm really interested in this stuff. And it's like, it's written with like grids and you know, a lot of it is it's a very, very technical document. And so I almost like, I do think like, and I do, by the way, think that when we get that report back that we commissioned for the housing production plan, there's going to be some stuff in there about our zoning. And from having sat in on like one or two of those meetings they've had with the consultant, I'm just saying this, I think we're not going to love all of it. Or like, it's going to be like, oh, wow, there might be some kind of messed up things in our zoning. I'm just saying that. But
and that's an excellent point. If the housing production plan points out zoning that might have some bias in it, they're doing some work for us. So that's good.
That is my one thought is I don't want to step on the Affordable and Fair Housing Commission's toes when this is an issue that they do care about. And I also just, I mean, I just think that that's a different year-long project, but it seems like such an important issue that I have sort of mixed feelings. Councilor Gomez, did I see your hand? Okay. But I do also think that there's a chance that you could spend, if this is a year-long project, you could spend a year potentially just in the city ordinances and never get to the other two documents. So sort of my thought was, I mean, and my initial thought is let's give them let's give them that, or I don't know, hear me out here, but like, let's give them that. Let's say, review the city ordinances. And if they finish that within the year, then let's look at traffic and traffic rules and orders. And, you know, if they want to sort of expand this and, you know, and evolve as we go, and, you know, as Peg used the word iterative earlier, and say like, okay, we've done that, and now we want to look at zoning, then let's have that conversation, and let's see if they feel that they need other resources in order to accomplish that, or if the planning department at that point wants to have a hand in the process where previously they may not have, or anything like that. That's just sort of my my knee-jerk thought is let's start with with one task, but leave the door open in the language to the possibility of them picking up, like, addressing additional documents. What do people think about that?
I think I would include traffic rules and orders from the get-go. I don't think that should be secondary. But I agree that zoning should be something they do not look at right away. They look at everything else. That's just where my practically speaking, planning department has such a huge workload. I think getting them involved in zoning would be.
That's what I'm saying. Like, maybe in a year things are different with the new employee, but right now it's. Councillor Coniff, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I would agree. I get a little nervous, admittedly, when we start to say, well, let's do ordinance and let's also have them look at traffic rules and orders. I think when we create the process, we have to be very specific. Like, they have to finish one before they do the other. Like, I don't want, it strikes me, unless there is a natural meshing of the two, that this could get derailed very quickly if people are not focused on one thing. So my preference would be that we do what we can, kind of, I think, Tom, you said it, within the year and with time left over, then we attack the traffic rules and orders. But I don't want to give the impression that they're kind of parallel paths. They are one right after the other. They're not at the same time, which probably was implied, inferred by what you said. But
I think we're allowed as a city council to direct this committee. So if you want to set up that structure, that process structure where they look at regular ordinances, then traffic rules and orders, then zoning, I think if you set up that structure, that's their task. They can't come back with a report in the first initial months that deals with traffic rules and orders, because that's not what we're asking them to do. If you want to do that, I have no problem with it. I just think that zoning is a big thing. That's going to be so hard to deal with.
yeah, no, you guys convinced me.
Pardon me?
You convinced me on that one.
What?
Do you the zoning to
Oh,
move
yeah.
that off the table for now?
Well, I don't want to, like, I'm not saying never, but I'm saying, like, focus on these things and then let's talk,
Right.
is kind of where I am.
How do you envision, Tom, like, and I think Sam may have said it as well, like, documenting very clearly the expectations of this committee, the process, the deliverables that are expected of the committee? Is that, and I'm fine if the answer is yes, I just need to know, is that going to come from the president, or is that going to come from this committee? Like, the specifics around that, the wording.
Well, my thought was, you know, we can, right, we can create, my hope was that the language that eventually comes out of this committee just basically says that, just lays out like the general parameters that we have agreed on here, and that from that point on, it's, you know, the president's job to, you know, well, you know, I mean, just as president, like any other committee, you know, to just sort of like, yeah, appoint the members. And I mean, I don't think that we in general, like as a council, like collectively oversee those things, but hopefully my thought would be that there would be one, like presumably a counselor who chairs the committee, who then can come, who then reports from the committee, and who then, if they say, oh, we actually want to do something that's a little bit different from what's described, we finished this stuff really early and we want to look at this other stuff or whatever. We actually found this sort of rabbit hole we want to go down over here, that they can bring that to the council to, make whatever change they need or to authorize whatever. But the motion that we have, creating this committee does have some pretty clear guidelines of what we are hoping to receive from the committee.
I think that's important, the word guideline. I think you have to have the parameters laid out. One, we recommend that this have 7 members, that optimally it has 2 or 3 counselors. Secondly, that the membership, we advertise as much for the I'm just reviewing what we've talked about tonight. We advertise that this membership, we're looking for people that have experience in bias, that might have, that they have some, and also experience in legal language, maybe. That we set up the structure of the committee, that their process should involve first doing regular city ordinances, then traffic rules and ordinance, then zoning if there's time. Those kinds of guidelines are important. If the committee does come back to us and say, hey, look, one of our members came up with this zoning ordinance that we feel is really bad, we can certainly consider it. But I think we should give direct guidelines to the committee, have it, when we make this recommendation, the full council approves it, and the president is therefore tasked with appointing the members. And we should do this soon. I think the next meeting we ought to come up with, maybe you could write something up, Tom, about all these 3 different areas you've brought up, the questions and where we are. But I think we've come to some agreement on most of them.
Right. Councillor Coniff, I saw your hand.
Yeah, so I don't disagree at all with anything you've said, Dan, but I guess where I was going is just saying those words are great, but I think they need to be codified in a document that is given to and broadcast out to the public. Sorry, that's a timer. My time is up. That goes out to the public so that they understand what they're signing up for. And my question is that me writing it or is it coming from this group? Either answer is fine with me. I just want to make sure that if it's me who's going to write the structure and write all the documentation, that I know that so that I can do it.
So
is
I'm
really where I
willing
was
to
coming from.
I'm willing to take what we have said here today and sort of distill that into a page or 2, and then maybe. I agree that we need to get going on this soon, but maybe either the week. I don't want to meet again next week because we're already meeting once next week. I guess sometime after our next meeting, but maybe before the next meeting. So maybe early the week of the, what would that be? Oh, that's not really going to work.
The week of the first week of November is next.
Yeah, maybe. So that's our next meeting, but I'm, Monday.
I've got a draft document, Tom, that has these guidelines. If you put out a draft document that has these guidelines, and we all look at it, and then we come to a meeting, maybe we amend them a little bit. That draft document can have specifics in it.
Yeah,
I think that might be enough. It depends on how far we want to go into the specifics. But I think tasking the president with developing all of these parameters isn't right. I think that's what our job is. And
yeah,
we
I agree.
present it to the council. The council has to vote, yes, we agree with this. I think getting the council to approve it is important. And then the president takes those guidelines and moves from there. I just don't think it's fair to Peg to make her write up all this stuff. I think
we're all on the same page there. Yeah,
I think we've it's not a big complicated thing. We've come up with some ideas tonight that I think you can coalesce into a document. Membership and the process and structure and all those things.
Yes, and I'm saying that I'm willing to do that. My one thing is I don't think that we're going to have, given what next week looks like. I don't think we're going to have a time where we can meet before our meeting on the 4th.
Oh, no, I don't feel that. at all.
So, but I think we can do it by the meeting on the 18th.
If we can meet again and present to the full council a recommendation on the 18th, that would be great. Because then
Okay.
the president can put out the word, and maybe sometime before the end of the year, a committee is formed. That would be nice, because then they have until the end of 2021 to come up with a final report, whatever we want to tell them. And
Yeah,
maybe they're
I thi-
giving us monthly written reports, that tells us what, and that should be part of the parameters that you come up with. How that we want to report, they're not actually amending language, they're pointing out language. Those are the kinds of things I think we agreed with tonight,
Mhm.
that they can come up with a report that we can act on, or they can say the council should act on this immediately and we deal with it. I don't think we should direct that the chair should be
Yeah.
city councilor. I don't know.
I just thought it would be helpful for them to be able to be there on hand to report.
Well, if that person agrees
Our
to be
reports from
chair, then they
standing
have to come to our meetings and report. Whoever
Right,
that
yeah,
is, the citizen, I mean,
Yeah. Okay. You're right. It would obviously be maybe a little bit more convenient if it was, and in terms of being able to interface with the council, I think a counselor would be in a good position to do that. But if they decide that to do somebody else, then that's also totally, I mean, it's fine with me.
well, I just hope we get 2 or 3 counselors that are willing to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
Peg, you're not allowed to volunteer.
Not and stay married anyway.
Does any member of the public have any additional thoughts? I mean, I feel like we're at a good place for me to sit down and sort of distill all of this into a document and get that out sometime next week, and then circulate it, and then meet sometime maybe the week of the 11th, or week of the 9th of November. But yeah, Kate, do you want to say anything?
Hey, Tom. Sorry I came into the meeting late. I was working a little bit late today. Just to make sure that I'm clear, there's going to be a 7-member panel with hopefully 3 city councilors, and then the rest will be made up of members of the public. But you're specifically looking for people that have experience with combing through legislation and some kind of legal language. Does that leave room for anybody that doesn't have that much language that maybe wants to give community input?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
anyone who has experience with that stuff, that's obviously a big plus, but we're also looking for lived experience, and, really just anyone who wants to should apply and make their case for why they could bring something to the table. I mean, a lot of this stuff is not, obviously, like what I think is really helpful is anyone who can, who can help us catch the things that might be blind spots for the counselors. That's going to be the big place, because otherwise we could just have 3 counselors do it. The real place where I think the value is have people from the community who have some different perspectives, some different experiences, whether that's professional or personal, who can just help us to see things from different perspectives and whatnot.
Okay.
And
I
was
know
only-
that I heard, oh, sorry.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. I only brought that up as maybe 1 member has that ability. Also, 3 members of the council, that could be the maximum. We're not asking this committee to write any new ordinances or amend even, just to point things out. But maybe just 2 members of the council would be enough. And I say that because I know that our counselors are already overwhelmed with tasks. So getting 2 people willing to do it might be all we get. And the members of the citizenry that want to do this, it has to be a commitment. I mean, we want all these other factors, people that have biased experience, maybe some legal capability, they're paralegals or they're ACLU people. But the bottom line is you've got to be able to be willing to attend 1 or 2 meetings a month and actually do some homework, look at the ordinances and ask the question, hey, I think this language has a problem. And it's really a commitment. I think that's the biggest thing. So all of these other things we're talking about, yeah, that'd be great if we could get them. But they have to, first of all, volunteer, and they have to know that volunteering means, yeah, you have to attend the meeting and you have to be willing to do some homework. So everything that I said was merely just a hope for that we get maybe one person with legal language, but the people with bias experience, that's huge. If we can get that, but it is a hard job. And, you know, we have people that are out there that are already on community relations committee that have
Yeah,
the same ideas, you know, so.
Yeah, and I will say that having, as president, put together at least one committee, maybe two so far, it is difficult to get the perfect combination of people. You know, when you're talking about the government and the public participating, you get what you get and you're grateful for it. And ideally, if we get all specific kinds of things that Dan was talking about, that would be awesome and wonderful. So I hope that we do, but it is hard. And, you know, it's hard for a 12-month commitment to meet monthly or twice a month. It's hard. So I will certainly look for people to counsel me on people who are willing to volunteer and be a part of the group. You know, I hope we get an amazing array of people. I really do.
And Tom, may I ask a question, a clarifying question? Is that okay?
Yes.
Thank you. So when you do the write-up of this, you're going to be putting out a description of the type of commitment that you're looking for that we can share with our networks, because I have spoken to some people that are interested, but it would be very helpful to have that description of the commitment to share with them.
Yeah.
Excellent point. Excellent point.
I think that's a really good point. Yeah. So yeah, what I'll do is I'll put together, I'll try and distill everything I heard here today into a document that establishes this committee and sort of has membership scope and blah, blah, blah. And that does set out sort of expectations about, like, this committee will exist for a year. It will meet at least once, preferably twice a month. Like, these things to sort of go through it. And then we'll have another meeting here in rules. I think that there might have been some, I know that a good number of folks said that they'd be interested in attending this who weren't here today, so it's possible there was some crossed wires. So if at that point there's a document and anybody thinks that there's a reason it should look a little different, we can always amend it at that next meeting. And then on the 18th, we will take a vote on it. And if it passes, which I kind of expect it will, then at that point, people can start applying, sending resumes to President Conniff, and then we'll try and get it off the ground before the end of the year so that they have a full 1 year that fits neatly within our council term to complete the project.
Good. So
Anything?
you got your marching orders, Mr. Peak.
Great. Yeah, I'll try and throw something together tonight. I also, but it'll certainly be in the next week, and I'll get that out to the committee. And
if you send us a draft, Tom, we can add our own thoughts to it, and send it back to you. Like,
yeah.
Hey, Tom, why don't we include this? Whatever.
Well, is that okay with open meeting law? Since we are a quorum?
You're giving out a draft report that we're gonna bring back to you. It's not like we're gonna hide the report. It's gonna be available at the next meeting.
No, absolutely. I'm just
thinking
worried
that or I'll just add my own edits and present them at the meeting.
That I think is a
Right.
better way. Tom, if you send us what you have, we will come back to the meeting with our specific changes.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And one thing I will that Dan that you brought up that I will attempt to convey in here is that it is the expectation that anyone who's on this committee is going to read the ordinance like section by section as they work, and is going to have like notes and suggestions ready to go for the meeting, because it was certainly like a big time suck when we did charter review, was folks like showing up to the meeting and then going section by section, like just digesting it as they go. So I think if they want to do this in a year and they want to provide thoughtful things, everyone needs to like have their thoughts on this ready to go, like when they sit down.
And that could be under membership, where you
Yeah.
should lay out your parameters based on your 3 points you brought up tonight. And then
Yeah.
under membership, how many, who they are, commitment, time, what the time is, 1 or 2 meetings a month, etc., homework, all of that can be in the document, so that when we send it out to people to publish it, like Kay mentioned, those are the things that are there. So people know, hey, if I'm going to volunteer for this, I might have to go to a meeting twice a month.
Yes.
So.
Okay, great. I know it's a little, maybe getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but does Thursday the 12th work for, I know that the Thursdays in between council meetings has kind of become the time that usually works for everyone. So if we want to get it in by the 18th, does Thursday the 12th, does that?
I have no problem with that.
Peg, you're muted.
I'm still looking. I mean, I'm
Okay.
looking. That's all I said. It wasn't that insightful.
Oh, all right. I saw your lips.
The 12th. My niece's first birthday that day. Yes, that will. Oh, we have a finance. Well, we don't
That's on
know. We have a
11th.
finance committee.
If
Okay.
we have one, it'd be the 11th.
No, we have city council on the 11th. No, we don't. Never mind.
No, we don't. This is
It's
November.
fine. God.
Okay.
All right.
Peg,
No
read it
comment.
then.
Well, I think that is everything then. So I feel pretty good about this. I think we made a lot of headway, and I'm glad that looks like we're basically on the same page about most of this stuff.
Okay.
So, yeah, let's take this and go from there. But for now, unless there's anything else from anybody, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
All right, all in favor?
Dan Riss says yes.
Peg Coniff says yes.
Tom Peake says yes. All right, thanks everybody, and have
Have a
you.
good evening, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Take
Bye,
care.
Omar.